Hello everyone, my name is Tom Clearwater and welcome to our little classroom for the little ones. I am giving a short presentation here on non-duality, and for that purpose I took the liberty of writing down what I wanted to say because the matter is so subtle and complex. I wanted to get the languaging correct in the sequence. It was important. As much as that I realize is a little bit unnerving to watch somebody just read something. But here it's important, so let's begin. We begin with a generalization. Duality is a general term about a general category within a general topic. General refers to that which is shared, and shared means common. And common is what is same across otherwise differing realities or things. So generality, in whatever form, is a unity function. Duality being a general term, it therefore refers to that which is unified across differences to which duality refers. Duality is therefore, as a state or a state or perception of unity. But duality implies two, you might say, which implies difference, so we must inquire what manner of difference, or how difference at all, could ever be unity. Here we can ask what manner of two is meant by the two of duality. Is it a numerical counting of any random two things like a tree or a car, or are we speaking of something else? To answer this question, we can first observe that because the two of duality is a two of general application, that two cannot be the two of any particular two things, but rather must be some generalized two-ness, i.e. is not two in particular, but two in general. What is this two in general as a generalized difference that, as such, is a unity? As a general two ranging across particularities, this two must be a structural characteristic inhering in those particularities at a level meta to them, i.e. as a two-ness meta to particularity itself. We can illustrate this idea by referring to the dual structure of matter as electron-proton. Here we observe that regardless the particular and very different expression of the two of electron-proton in any of various forms of matter, whether as hydrogen or lead, for instance, all such expressions ultimately resolve structurally as two in their general dual nature, or in other words, in their dual ontology. This we can take as a clue that the thorny philosophical problems of ontology are handily solved by noting that all matter being dual in its general constitution, and ontology being fundamentally a quest for a general statement of matter's general characteristics, duality as the most general structural feature of matter is therefore matter's proper ontology. Matter, ontologically, is not but its dual nature, so matter, ontologically, is duality per se. Once duality is recognized as the general and therefore unifying characteristic of all matter, questions concerning the substance of material reality or the absence of substance in the Buddhist ontological counter-mistake simply drop as irrelevant. The actual substance of material reality is meta to all of that, and it is called duality. The same analysis applies even more broadly beyond matter to all reality, that all reality is dual, and that duality is the proper expression of what we can call the character of reality itself, that reality actually has an identifiable characteristic. It is dual. Moreover, this characteristic being of the nature of unity is the unity of reality in general. So is self-subsisting, is always already the case, and is, as an identifiable unity function, absolutely necessary and absolutely prior. Duality, in fact, is identical to reality in its always present and ever necessary generality. So duality is the ultimate prior, and because unity is a fundamental component of what is meant by order, duality is the fundamental order of all reality, the most fundamental, which is why the general aspect of any subcomponent of reality, like matter, admits a dual structure, fundamentally. Duality is therefore the long-sought general unified theory, the GUT of all those physicists who cannot see through the tangle and complexity of all those ever-multiplying particularities to perceive this ultimate simplicity, though it makes sense even more broadly that if you are seeking unity, like those physicists are and have been, by definition you do not have it. Apart from duality being a general feature of reality and of reality's material expression and so on, can anything else be said of duality to indicate its unity, reality, and function? The answer is that quite a lot can be said, but before we get to some of that, I want to say that what I will be saying, combining with what I have already said, will not constitute evidence or proof for what I am asserting as the nature of generality and of the fact and function of unity and of the ontological representation of these in and as duality. Those who are sufficiently familiar with unity and its function know unity cannot be proven, just as God, which is just a name for unity, cannot be proven. The proof for these phenomena, which are phenomena of awareness and perception, is rather the nature of self-evidence, as the best of spiritual teachers have understood, where self-evidence translates as an internal rather than external self-consistency and coherence, having in fact the feeling of beauty, affirmation from within, from the inside, rather than as with proof from the outside. That being the case, I now leave the issue aside to ask the question of the functioning of duality's content, the inside view of duality complementary to the outside view which I sketched above. Notice that duality being duality, it will necessarily have an inside and an outside modality and reflection. Here we look to its inner region. So what is the character of two at the general level? Because, as I said, generality is a unity expression. That which is indicated as a feature of unity will of necessity have only one term, or reality, opposite that which is indicated as such. That term, moreover, will with its complementary other itself be a unity, in fact, an absolute unity, and this of necessity, unity being necessity. This is a very subtle point, difficult to convey. We can begin with the observation that for any term applicable at the general level, because that term identifies a general characteristic, it applies, as it must, equally across any and all phenomena to which it applies. It applies, in other words, to everything. Because it applies to everything, the term admits no variation in its application, where it will be found as an equally present characteristic in anything, or it simply could not be called general. There is, because there can be, no variation, no greater or lesser presence of any general characteristic in any reality whatsoever, such that some universal element will be more greatly represented here and less so there. No, both here and there will share equally in every universal factor or feature, by definition, because that feature is universal. But note the following implication. Because any term is a distinction, that term will necessarily imply, like any other term, what it is not. If you combine these two statements of the universal application of general terms and the action of each term implying what it is not, you will see that any general term, like for instance whole, will imply only a single term constituting what it is not, which in the present example is part. Whole and part in this fundamental sense form a single polarity constituting in true binary expression negative versions of each other, that what is not whole is always and only ever part, and what is not part is always and only ever whole. whole and part, as the general, all applicable terms they are relationally inverse, inside-out versions of each other. And because they necessarily imply each other, they must be said to not only negatively define, but also to be each other in their inverse relation, that drawing or defining one draws or defines the other, just as the S line in the yin-yang symbol draws both yin and yang simultaneously. As the polarity these two are, they are, as such, complete in their application to anything to which they apply as descriptors, just as the wave-particle duality in quantum physics is a complete description of material form and expression. We could put this way, that in the domain of the particular there is a continuum of what is meant by a given term. If, for instance, we take the example of the term tree, there exists, as actual and possible realities of a tree, a continuum of what it means to be this tree and not that, whether this tree as a birch, that as a maple, or this tree as a tree and that as a shrub, or this as a tree and that as a car ad infinitum. In the domain of the general, on the other hand, we see only binary distinction, where any given term or reality taken as the reference will be positive, meaning its implied other will be negative to it. This is the fuller sense of what it means to say we live in a yin-yang universe, a dual, or as I prefer, a polar reality. That all reality in its general aspect as reality per se is always already polar. It is here we meet the consideration that how and what a given term or reality implies depends on its polar status as either a general or particular term or reality. At the general level, we see only binary implication, which holds oppositely at the particular level, where a term of only particular application will imply an infinity of particulars as what it is not. The general being the domain of unity, or the domain of the one, the particular is oppositely the domain of the many. Thus, where general terms have this overriding characteristic of yin-yang oppositionality, implying only one other term as their opposite, particular terms imply oppositionality opposite to general terms, by implying not one, but the many, which is infinity. You might pause here to note that an important badge of self-evidence is self-consistency, which shines brightly in what I am saying right now. We can summarize here by saying duality viewed from an outside view is a difference function of binary polar expression, like the polar expression of electron-proton in matter. Duality viewed oppositely from an inside view is a unity of negative identity. The totality of these two is itself a polarity, being both a difference and a unity simultaneously. And as a final note, because this talk is supposed to somehow concern non-duality, non-duality is merely the unity function of what duality, taken as difference, or two, implies as unity, or one. Or in other words, is one pole of a polarity comprised of duality on the one hand as polar difference, and its negative opposite non-duality on the other as implied polar unity, where we meet here the polar mathematical expression 2 equals 1. Simple, straightforward, and clear.